podcast, we're going to talk about choosing curriculum. And I suppose we're going to really give tips for helping parents to choose curriculum. What do you need when you're going to start homeschooling? And I always tell the story about back when I started, and I told my mother, who was a teacher, that I was intending to homeschool. And she said to me, well, this is what you need to teach your child in order to equip them to be able to learn anything they want the rest of their lives. They must know the 3 R's, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic, or we call it maths. They must be able to work with money and be able to do research, like use a dictionary and the library and the internet, because then if there are any gaps, they can fill them in and they can learn anything they need when they need to do it. Yeah. And, you know, as a parent, if you think about those skills that she listed, you can teach those things to your children roughly by about age 12, assuming they don't have any learning challenges or anything abnormal. And if you just consider that, it's actually not that difficult. Yes, the first 3 years are a challenge when you've got to actually sit with a child and listen to them sound out their phonics and learn long division step by step and maths layer for layer. It is quite intense, but in the long-term big picture, it's not that much that you have to teach your children, and then they can take ownership of their education. So choosing a curriculum when you start out, we always recommend that people choose products for those discipline subjects, reading and languages and maths. And then you can find other programs or even just use the library for everything else. And you can get your children to say what they want to learn. And you can then find resources that suit them and give them this tailor-made kind of education. What would you add to a young mom who's trying to figure out what she needs to buy to get going?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. Once your children have got those bases down, their own education takes off. But there is that that desire for us to do delightful things, you know, and that's why I'm so grateful that I found Charlotte Mason to be my teacher who came and spoke to me way back when. And that's why in your sort of other spaces, on the days that you can manage, especially if your children are small, your time might be limited because you've got newborns and all that sort of thing. But even as they grow up, to offer them a broad, a banquet of information that they can draw from. And that's where your question is that, well, what would they like to study? What can we add in? And it doesn't mean that the mother has to go and reinvent the wheel. There are so many programs out there. For instance, if your children are so interested about what they are seeing outside the car window, or it's voting season and they're asking questions and that takes them on a rabbit trail down, you know, what South Africa is, well, obviously there are programs like Footprints, or if you're going up to the Golden Gate Park, you know, you've got Nature Quest and you can just start building your lives around those sorts of things. But if a child has a deep dive into world history, library, internet, short unit studies that you can add in. But let's not forget those other things, music and art and poetry, because the world needs all types of those things. And that was my story, is when we started out homeschooling, I thought that I was raising doctors and lawyers and, you know, and I've ended up with 3 artists working in different fields and then 1 engineer. So we don't know what the child is going to grab in their soul and run with, which is why we need to offer them this broad, generous education, whether it comes through our reading together or purchasing a set curriculum for science or history or geography. But those things you grow into as you go along and as your child's personality and interests and bents start to unfold. And that makes that fun. I mean, I didn't enjoy the maths days sitting, and I certainly didn't enjoy sitting listening to 4 kids working out their phonics, but you do it because you know that's a platform that they need to build the rest of their lives on. You also did some very interesting things each year. I think you used to ask your kids, what would you like to include? And there was electronics and there was all sorts of different things. Do you want to speak a little bit about those extra things?
Yeah, that's what we would call electives. So in our home, we always did English and languages and science and social studies, but in different seasons. And And some seasons we just did those basics because I was pregnant or I had a baby or a toddler. But in some years I had capacity to do more, or my kids were old enough to do other things independently. And so yes, one or two of my sons actually did an online homeschool electronics course for a while. We got the kits and there were online lessons. Some of them did French for a year, just with also a homeschool French program that they wanted to do. Some have done a year or two of Latin, which I think is quite useful because I did it at school, and although it's a dead language, it's helped with science and vocab and lots of other things. And some of my kids like doing art, so they've had art lessons with a tutor. And that child has gone into an art degree. So and for a season 3 of them did music lessons as well, and then that season came to an end. But as parents, we can let our children dabble in these electives and see if they enjoy them. And, sometimes it becomes a long-term career. Sometimes it's just a skill they learned along the way, but they've learned how to teach themselves something. And I think that's sometimes also important, not just the actual skill, but that I can learn online. I can take a drawing class online. I can take a painting class online, electronics, whatever it is. So you've got many years ahead, and you'll have capacity for some things, and some years you might not.
Yeah.
But you've got that freedom if you want it.
But that's it. That's, I think, the point that I just want to bring in closing is that when we buy a prepackaged curriculum, or that covers all of your subjects, and it's got a schedule, or even sort of your textbooks, or your distance education stuff, your time is not your own. So your children, by the time that they have completed the work that has been allocated to them by this external body, they probably just want to go and blob. Whereas a child who's had a light, fun, engaging homeschooling day that they've had a say in, you probably find that the afternoon, and I saw this in our kids, becomes an extension of their learning. They're not so exhausted, and they don't see learning as something that only happens between 8 and 12. It's an extension of their whole day. So when choosing a curriculum, while our nature is to go for safe, secure, something that's familiar, actually say, well, let's take the road less traveled. Let's see what the children are interested in and choose curriculum around that. So I hope that is encouraging for parents. It's not like this is what you must choose. You must have this, you must have that, you must have that. I think, again, like we always say to moms, you can trust yourself. You taught your child to walk and to talk and to do their chores and brush their teeth, and home education is simply an extension of that.